Hello there and welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be having a look at the final part in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie trilogy, Turtles 3. So it's a bit of a sad end to, got through all the original movies now. We'll try and do the subsequent films that come after that, most notably like the 2007 animated version as well as the 2014 reboot. But looking at Turtles 3 now, it did get the subtitle Turtles in Time. That wasn't originally what was actually the title of the film. It was just simply Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 when it was released, when I saw it at the cinema back in the day. So the final part of the original film trilogy, made in 1993, and this is sort of like the beginning of the end here. This is sort of where it all started to go a bit wrong. This is when, I know this film has got so much hate. It's not very good. Unfortunately, it's not. It's a shame that the original trilogy ended on such a lackluster film. That while 2 was, in my opinion, like I said in the previous review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, it still had its moments, Turtles 2, whereas this one is just, unfortunately, it just misses so many marks. It just misses so many. It's just lame is really the sort of the kindest way to sort of describe it, especially in regards to sort of like just the way the turtles are portrayed and just what actually happens in the story. But we'll be getting into that today in the review. You have to remember, a lot of kids who grew up with the turtles, like myself at this point, were getting older. The first film was 1990. This was like 3 years on now. So kids, they grow up, they go through things, different trends. They go through, 1 minute they're into this, then they're into that. So that original sort of fan base with the Turtles, we're getting a bit older. You think, okay, it's only been 2 or 3 years, but they might be moving into different things. There might have been other things that have got their interest. So that original sort of, like I say, what that fan base that was in 1990, they've had 2 or 3 years now to sort of grow up. They might have moved on from the Turtles. They gaining new interests in life and God knows what else. This was a film that, like I mentioned, I went to see at the cinema on the day of release. So I would have been about 7 or 8 at the time. It would have been definitely, so I would have been about, just around 8 years old, 7 years old. We took my friend at the time and we were just so bored. Even as kids, we were absolutely so bored. We're both turtle geeks. We absolutely love the turtles. Still, I still do. Still have such fond memories of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But even at the time, being a kid watching this, I didn't like it. There was nothing about this film where there was just, you thought as a child, like watching it, you're like, it just missed the mark. So it missed that audience. I just did not understand what was going on. Not in terms of the plot, but just in terms of what they were doing with the turtles and just what was happening. Just what the hell was happening. We were just, what the hell was going on? The wheels had started to come off a bit in Turtles 2, but nowhere near as bad as they had in this movie. This was the last time we got to like a theatrical release Turtles movie until 2007. It's one of them movies that on paper, they probably thought, this is pretty awesome. We got a good idea here, like the Turtles go back in time and, we can set it in like feudal Japan. And on paper, that sounds quite cool. I'm sure when they were planning this and writing the script, they more, that's interesting. That's a different take. Rather than just setting it in like sort of New York City present day that we've had so far, let's mix it up a bit. Let's send the Turtles back in time. So unfortunately, it just doesn't translate that well to the screen, which is the shame about this. It just doesn't, as I say, it just misses so many marks. The film was titled simply Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, but since then it's had the subheading Turtles in Time. At least it has on this Blu-ray collection. Most notably, largely due to the Konami video game of the same name. The Turtles were no longer done by the Jim Henson Workshop in this movie either, which shows as the Turtles look absolutely awful. The Turtles look absolutely goddamn awful. They look, it's just they just don't compare to like Turtles 1 and Turtles 2, and some of the dialogue and jokes in the film are beyond bad and cringeworthy, and like Corey Feldman returns as Donatello. That's probably one of the only notable things about this movie in regards to sort of the casting and things like that. But yeah, we'll be getting into that today. I've been talking for nearly sort of 5 minutes now, but we're actually getting to the review now. So the film starts in Japan in 1603. someone like being chased by some samurai. I mean, it's amazing in these days, even in like ancient Japan, in feudal Japan. I know, probably there was people that knew English, like some English, but it's amazing the amount of people in Japan in them days that just speak fluent English when they have no reason to even talk English. When it's Japanese talking to Japanese, it's amazing why they choose to speak English. Fluent English, I might add as well. I mean, I think the film would have worked if they would have done sort of like the video game did, where they sort of like the turtles sort of hop around in time rather than just setting it in one place the whole time. I think it would have benefited from being sort of like a Back to the Future-esque, especially sort of something like Back to the Future 2, where they sort of go to 2 or 3 different time periods throughout the movie. That would have been really interesting. That if their turtles, like 1 minute they're in the future, then they're in the past, and then they have like an alternate sort of present day, something like that, to really that would have really added to it. But where it's just set, once we see ancient feudal Japan, that is it. We're not moving from there. We go there, we stay there. I think that would have given it a lot more sense of fun. So, set in that setting, to the average child, like, it's not very interesting. They really could have expanded on the whole like Splinter and like Hamato Yoshi like lineage and his martial arts that like sort of Splinter learned, but we get none of that. Like, they could have really expanded on sort of where Splinter come from, or his master, or the backstory of his master and things like that, like going back, like the lineage, something like that, anything like that. But we get none of that, and I just think it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. This film has the worst introduction to the turtles ever. It has, by far, out of all 3 movies, this is the worst introduction you get to the turtles. Like the first one, they sort of jump out the shadows and it builds and builds. Second one, not quite as cool, but still cool nonetheless, where they're all sort of it freeze frames in, like, and all the 4 turtles are in midair. This one, just, they're doing like, I won't even go into this sort of dance thing that they're doing. I mean, Splinter looks like roadkill. I mean, Splinter looks like absolute death in this movie. He, you never see his bottom half. Then as the film starts, Raphael right away is sort of getting like angry as always. Like, what are we doing this for? We're trapped down here. Nobody knows we're here, and this typical Raph stuff. Like, we know, Raph, that's what you always, change the dialogue a bit. Let's make it a bit, we get you're the angry, moody one, but, that's just sort of putting it in just to put it in. Raph just complaining about something, not really anything specific. Then April comes down with, like, some stuff, as she calls it, some stuff, so for the turtles, which she randomly bought from the shops, and she has this like ancient time travel scepter device. I mean, what are the odds, huh? What are the odds? Like, she has this device that she just picks it up and in a random shop, and just so happens it's time travel sort of device that can, and it just, what are the odds? So then we go back to ancient Japan, and again we meet our villains, and like this prince who has tried to leave the castle as he feels his father is waging like sort of an unjust war. I mean, who the hell is Norinaga and Walker? Who are these people? Why should any fan or kid who is like into the Turtles give a crap about these 2 people? They had so many villains they could have chosen to be in this film. They could have chosen, they didn't have to go back to, they could have chosen anything. They could have chosen Leatherhead, they could have chosen Rat King, they could have chosen Krang. No, we get these 2. We get these 2 random people because that's what kids want to see. Absolute. What were they thinking? What on earth were what were the people behind this smoking and drinking when they come up with this? Like, I don't get where you've got this whole Turtles lineage of villains and like this rose gallery of like people in the like characters in the cartoon, in the comics that they could have chose from. Couldn't they have done something like Rise of Rat King or something, anything like that? But we get these 2 random people. It just, I mean, why would any kid, like I say, be interested in these 2 when we have no damn clue who they are, and they're like the most boring villains in the world? So his, like, Norinaga's son, like, smashes a statue and reveals, like, a scepter and an ancient scroll depicting the turtles. So April and this guy sort of switch places, and they all think, like, when she goes back to Japan, they all think she's, like, this witch. Then out of nowhere, Casey Jones turns up in present day, and then He just turns up, and it's nice to see Casey again. Don't get me wrong, that's great. It's nice they sort of brought him back from the first film, but he's so wasted in this, which I'll get to in a minute. But he's just completely wasted. April's locked in this dungeon with somebody who looks like Casey, but it's not Casey, even though it's played by the same guy, and serves no purpose whatsoever. There's no reason, other than he's got dual roles, but there's no reason why. There's just a guy there that looks like Casey but isn't Casey, and it's just so he's not just doing Casey. This guy, he's doing something else. He's in the movie a bit more substantially. This girl called Mitsu leads this rebellion. The turtles go back in time, taking the place of Norinaga's honor guards. So on arrival, Mikey gets knocked out by Mitsu, and the rest of the turtles sort of break into Norinaga's, where the running joke begins of them giving this character Niles a wet willy. I mean, I'm not even going to go into that. I'm just leaving that as said, leaving that as it is. So they free April and this Casey guy. And they go looking for Mikey, just shouting his name randomly in the forest, where Mitsu and her clan discover them, and Walker has sort of set fire to their village. And I say I'm sort of crashing through the plot here, but there's just so little to talk about in regards to actually what happens. Then Niles sort of gets wet-willied again. Mikey goes in to save this kid Yoshi from one of the huts. And then Leo has to perform CPR at one point. So we've gone from giving someone wet willies to, okay, a child might die. Bit of a leap there in terms of what is happening on screen, in terms of, to go from something as giving somebody a wet willy to, okay, there's a kid here who's actually dying. Just that the way it shifts gears like that is very off. It just goes from that to, right, this something really sort of traumatic and dramatic, and it just makes no sense. It doesn't flow well. And the Walker, we find out, wants gold from Norinaga so he can give his guns, and they can use it against the turtles, who they refer to sort of as demons, and because whatever. But so at this point, the turtles start bonding amongst the villagers, learning to ride horses, taking showers, making pizza, teaching the kids not to fight, and flying kites. Real great stuff that's really advancing the plot. Just turtles just mucking in, flying kites, laughing and joking. It's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. It's just turtles just hanging around with some villagers. That is it. There's nothing going on. There is nothing going on. It's like they've got no story to tell here whatsoever. Oh, God. So at one point, Wit, who is the 1603 version of Casey, that's his name, says to April, "Take me with you." And he's like, "I want to come with you back to where you come from." And she's like, "Look, I'm not having this conversation." It's like, he's only asking, he's only just saying, look, why have you gone all cold on him? He was just asking a simple question, or just implying it, could I come with you? She's like, "Look, I'm not having this conversation." Okay. So Casey Jones in this film, like I said, he's just a babysitter, and okay, it's nice to see him back from the first film, like I mentioned earlier. But would have been nice, wouldn't it have been even better if we saw him interact with the turtles a bit more? Wouldn't that have been a lot more fun? When he turns up, the biggest insult is when he turns up, he's like, "What say we get together and we go and bash some skulls?" Wouldn't that have been a much better movie? Wouldn't that have been a much better movie, just the turtles and Casey teaming up, going around New York, taking out some thugs and criminals and things like that? I'd watch that any day. Rather than what we got. The fact he says, "Let's go and bash some skulls," you think, yeah, that sounds a good idea. Why didn't you just do what Casey said? Why didn't you listen to Casey? Oh, God. So that, you say, that just would have been so much better. I mean, Yoshi, this kid, is 7, and again, like I mentioned earlier, just fluent in English. Absolutely, he's 7 years old in feudal Japan. He can speak such fluent English perfectly fine. Not bad, considering, like I say, I don't know, it's ancient feudal Japan, which, like I say, I can understand there might have been some people around then that can speak English and did understand the English, but a kid like that, about 6-7 years old, would he have known any English? I don't know, probably not. So the only sweet moment this film has is when he sort of hugs Raphael and says, "I can't let you die, Raphael." That's a little bit of a sweet moment. That adds a little bit of a drama that you think, okay, that there is stuff on the line here, there is stakes, but you know, it's not, that's about the only sense of ever like sort of drama or sort of any threat we get where you have a little kid saying, look, I don't want you to die, Raphael. So there is that sort of that bonding, it's kind of a sweet scene there, which is a nice moment. And then we learned like this kid hid the scepter as the village elder asked him to, so the turtles wouldn't go home and would help them fight Norinaga. So Wit takes Mitsu hostage and wants the scepter, and Kenshin, who's the prince, he's brought him brought to the castle. So yet again, the turtles go on a rescue mission. You wouldn't know Leo was in this film half the time. You would not know even Leonardo was there. The bulk of like the turtles when they're together, a lot of it is Corey Feldman. It's Corey Feldman as Donatello. A lot of the time when the turtles get, all you can hear usually is Donatello's voice. And there's some cracking one-liners in this movie. Some real, like some humdingers in this one, such as you were expecting maybe the Addams Family and the absolute zinger that Donnie does when he kicks somebody and says, I get a real kick out of this job. You know, real classics, real absolute great quotes there. Or like when they says at one point they say, well, yeah, we're turtles of the Teenage Mutant Ninja variety. Yeah, you don't need to say what you are. We know what you are. You know, that's never been done. You don't need to actually say what you are to the audience in the dialogue. We know. You don't have to tell us. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing at some stage, like in the future, if, like I say, the powers that be decided to make a real, true, grounded, darker version of the Turtles, like I've mentioned before, that is honest and true to the law? Wouldn't that be amazing if they'd done sort of a reboot, remake the Turtles in a darker, grittier, thriller-esque type noir setting, and really with some great fight scenes, great action, get a real top-notch fight choreographer in, and really do give the Turtles the justice they deserve for that big screen treatment? It really would make me one happy guy. So, you know, I won't ever get my hopes up. So Walker goes to shoot the turtles with a cannon. Leo ducks and sort of goes into his shell, so it sort of misses him. Walker freaks out and runs away with the scepter. So Wit sort of saves them, and then Raph and Leo... Raph and Mikey, they don't want to go back. They don't want to go back to the pub, which is the absolute... that would not happen. There is no way... Raph and Mikey say, I like it here. They would never abandon Splinter. Never, ever in a million years. They would never, ever just say, do you know what, I'm staying here. They don't ever once cross their mind to think of Splinter, who might actually miss them, who gave them everything, who taught them everything. They just think, no, I want to stay here. There is no... Mikey and Raph especially, if you look at the first film, it's depicted almost in a way that they're the ones that care the most for Splinter. Especially like sort of when Raph and Splinter in the first movie are having that moment where Splinter's like, I've tried to help channel your anger, or where they're all sort of meditating and then they like connect with Splinter in a spiritual way, and then all the turtles are crying. They all care about him. So why on earth would Raph and Mikey think, I'm going to stay here? Oh, it just makes no sense. There is no way that would happen. No way they would even give it a second thought, stay in a place where there is no pizza, and more importantly, just abandoning Splinter. I mean, so you look at the first film, how much they care about him and love him, it's just not shown here. So they go back, and Mikey is all down, and Splinter cheers him up with like a Hawaiian lampshade on his head, and they do the same hammy, tacky dancing we saw at the beginning of the movie. That's the end. That is the end of the Turtles 3. Oh, bit of a rant, that one, but as I say, it just missed so many marks. I don't know what they were doing. Why couldn't they have had some classic villains in from the TV show or the Turtles franchise? Why couldn't they have taken the idea of time travel element and set it in a more interesting and fun setting? Like I said, I think on paper it would have been great, but just watching, like, kids don't want to watch something back in the day in ancient times. You know, it's not necessarily fun for like a young kid to see that. And like I say, even when I was little and I watched this movie, I was so bored as well. And it's just a shame that this is the last part of the original trilogy and they just didn't know. The costumes, so Turtles look like crap, Splinter looks like roadkill, the plot makes no sense, villains are terrible, dialogue is awful. But just a shame that this was sort of the last Turtles movie we got to see until sort of 2007, many years later, which I will try and review at some stage. But we've got through all of the original classic Turtles movies, and I hope you've enjoyed the review. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.